All right. Welcome to the 18th Izzy Awards ceremony. I'm Marcy Sutherland. Yeah, woohoo! Rowdy bunch, I like it. I'm Marcy Sutherland, the Research and Communications Coordinator for the Park Center for Independent Media here at Ithaca College. It is an absolute pleasure to have you all here. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate the late maverick journalist IF Izzy Stone by honoring outstanding achievements in independent media. This evening's MC is Mickey Huff. Mickey is the third director of the Park Center for Independent Media and professor of journalism here at Ithaca College's Roy H. Park School of Communications. Mickey is also the third director of Project Censored and is the president of the nonprofit Media Freedom Foundation. To date, he has co-edited 17 editions of the project's yearbook, State of the Free Press. He is also the co-author with Nolan Higdon of Let's Agree to Disagree, a practical handbook on critical thinking and civil discourse, the United States of Distraction, and a co-author of the Media and Me Guide to Critical Media Literacy for Young People. Mickey is the founding co-host and executive producer of the Project Censored show, the project's syndicated public affairs radio program. A longtime musician, he lives with his amazing wife, two awesome offspring, and their heavy metal pets, Lemmy the dog and Ozzy the cat, of course here in Ithaca. The one and only Mickey Huff.
Hi everybody, thanks so much, Marcy. It's a delight to be here. It's an honor to be here with all of you this evening. Welcome to the newly expanded Izzy Fest 2026 and Press Freedom Forum. This is the culminating event, the 18th annual Izzy Award ceremony. This year, the Izzy Award will be shared by one amazing outlet and three incredible journalists for their work done in the muckraking spirit of IF Izzy Stone. The Izzy Award is named, as you heard, after the maverick journalist IF Izzy Stone, who launched IF Stone's Weekly in 1953 and exposed government deception, McCarthyism, and racial bigotry. Presented by the Park Center for Independent Media annually for outstanding achievement in independent media, the Izzy Award goes to an independent outlet, journalist, or producer for contributions to our culture, politics, or journalism created outside traditional corporate structures. We will also induct a fourth member into the Izzy Hall of Fame. There have only been 3 in the last 18 years, and this year we are inducting a new member to the Izzy Hall of Fame, so you'll have to stick around and find out who that is. Again, I said we're going to be we're going to be inducting this person. We're going to celebrate this later, and the point of the evening, really, the whole evening and the whole Izzy Fest, is really to celebrate what we have in the independent press, and it's to celebrate that we do have a growing body of voices in the independent media, of truth-telling, muckraking journalists. They often get drowned out, right, by a lot of the noise and the din from the corporate press, and a lot of people say, well, where do we go? Where do we look? And so my job here with the Park Center for Independent Media is to try to help people find those independent sources and realize that those are viable paths for future careers. Those are things that aren't just available to do for a job, they're a way of life, right? And people in the independent press, that's what they do because they don't do anything else. That's what they have to do. And many people that are independent reporters, they don't get paid the same kind of money that you get paid at the bigger outlets, but that doesn't mean that they can't earn a living. And that doesn't mean that they don't collaborate and cooperate in ways to make those things possible. And that's also what we're celebrating tonight, because I don't need to tell you all, even though it is a gloriously beautiful day here in Ithaca, we are living in some otherwise grim and dark times for many people, both here and across the globe. And it's important to remember that. But it's also important for those that do the kind of incredibly important storytelling that happens in the independent press to acknowledge that their work matters and reminds us that the media, a truly free press, ethically reporting in the public interest, can and still does make a difference. Launched in 2008, the Park Center for Independent Media at Ithaca College is a national center for the study of independent media, focusing on news outlets that create and distribute content, as I said, outside the corporate establishment. I teach courses here in the journalism program, and I have a great honor of teaching and learning from the students that are here. And I teach an incoming a first-year experience course called The Media and Me, which is a guide to critical media literacy for young people. And I also teach upper division courses. On one of them I'm teaching right now, and my students are here. It's called Fighting Fake News, Press Freedom, Disinformation in the Post-Truth World. So we do talk about important and deep issues that are going on. And we, in my classes, we don't talk about objectivity and neutrality. We talk about finding the facts and telling the stories that the public needs to hear, right? And so those are very important things, I think, that we're also celebrating here. Also, Marcy and I are planning to teach a similar class for Ithaca College's summer high school students. We're trying to start teaching people younger and younger about media literacy, and we're starting right here in the Ithaca community to try to build more of people and people that live in Ithaca. We're trying to also get them to see that Ithaca College is a place for them, right? PCIM also recently partnered with the good people at the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival, sponsoring 3 films this year, including by one of this year's Izzy winners, and we'll talk about that in a little while. So while we're on the move, there's not much to be done, and we are grateful to be able to promote PCIM's mission on campus, the broader community, and across the country. So again, but before we begin, it's really important to acknowledge everyone that supports the Park Center for Independent Media, the Izzy's, and independent media, both here at Ithaca College and in our extended community. So I would like to ask if you would please bear with me and be patient. I do want to thank a number of people. I did this last year because it's very important to me that the people that do the work behind the scenes that are seemingly invisible to others are in fact really integral to making things like this happen on every single level. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a few minutes about an evening that celebrates independent media and the important work that independent journalists do. And we often say things like, well, we can't see them or they feel invisible. Well, a lot of people that behind those scenes that work at those independent presses, like they feel that way. A lot of people that work here behind the scenes to do things sometimes maybe don't get the recognition that they deserve. And so I want to take a few minutes and I want to do that. And again, there's a number of people. But my point in doing this is to show that when we shine the light in those places, we realize that we really do need to collaborate and work with people. And we really need to work through differences to make things happen. And that's how events like this are really possible. So, of course, we would not be here this evening if it were not for the foresight, generosity, and undying passion for supporting independent media from one incredible person, Adelaide Park-Gomer. So I would like to give a big round of applause for Adelaide. Thank you, Adelaide. Of course, we'd also like to thank Rachel Leone, Executive Director of the Park Foundation Board. They fund so many independent media outlets and journalists. Our media ecosystem is deeply enhanced by that support, and we're very, very grateful. Also, Jeremy J. Stone's estate from the Izzy Award. It's a privilege to be able to honor Izzy's great independent reporting legacy and to celebrate it annually for the past 18 years, bestowing his namesake award on the best and brightest indie reporting, and we are honored to be assembled here this evening with all of you. Special thanks to the estate of Jeremy Stone, Izzy's son, and the Park Center for Independent Media's inaugural director, Jeff Cohen, for stewarding this path. So we live in a digital era, and we're really grateful for those who help us navigate that noisy terrain to elevate our work in news literacy and independent media. Special thanks to PCIM's friends with cutting-edge web skills bolstering our online presence, people who are experts in web technologies choosing to do good in the world, unlike real-life comic book supervillains of Silicon Valley. So we want to thank Matt Werner and Dina Werner Design, LLC, for rebuilding the official IF Stone archive online. Please check out ifstone.org. It's been recently rebuilt. It looks beautiful. It is an amazing site with an homage to Lizzie's work and legacy, and it is a fantastic academic and public information resource. I'd also like to thank Kate Horgan, who works with us at Project Censored, for her excellent work redesigning and rebuilding the official Park Center for Independent Media website. Please go look at it. It's absolutely beautiful. parkindymedia.org. And the good work of all these people help us get the word out about what we do online and around the world. I also would like to thank the Park School of Communications Dean's Office, including the Dean, Amy Faulkner, Rob Gearhart, Mickey Quinn, who also they worked on with one of our students, L. Wilcox, on sort of a park takeover on Monday, 420, where Park Center was kind of right in the middle of everything, balloons and all, and on all the screens, and the students were talking to everybody about independent media. And there was a lot of interest, and so I'm really happy to see that since I've been here, there's a lot of people that are interested in this kind of work, and I'm hoping that more students want to learn about it. Also, I'd like to thank April Johans, Bethany Vino, Brandy Holly, who worked with Jeff Cohen early in PCIM's time here. And Brandy, of course, helped me when I first got here as institutional memory, and that's really, really important. So I'd like to give a round of applause for Brandy. Also want to thank Erin Schiefelbein and Stacy Hall, people behind the scenes that process a lot of the money and finance things that I'm not really good at, and that's why I'm grateful for Marcy and grateful that we have them to help us do these things, so thank you very much. Thanks, too, to the faculty and staff who have been very supportive of PCIM since I arrived in the summer of 2024. And most of all, I have to thank the stellar students here at Ithaca College, because they are the reason we're here, and it's an honor and privilege to teach and learn from them. So thank you. I have to thank the journalism department and the PCIM team, Todd Shack, who's been a supporter of the Park Center for Independent Media for a long time. Of course, Marcy, who I'm said, former directors Jeff Cohen and Raza Rumi have been incredibly kind to me and very supportive, and I'm very grateful for their ongoing commitment to the success of the center and the people who have worked here over the years, including Mara Stevens. I just talked about Brandy Holly, Hannah Brooks, and Jeremy Lovelet. Again, and now we have amazing students working with us at the Park Center. And this past semester, this included graduating seniors Vivian Rose, Jackie Vickery, and Elle Wilcox. And again, my wonderful students in general. And you're going to see more from Vivian, Jackie, and Elle later, and a couple of other folks. So again, I just want to have another big round of applause for students, because we can't applaud them enough. I also want to thank our co-sponsors this evening as part of Izzy Fest. The idea, I came last year and we did the 17th annual, and I was like, we should just do a couple days, and pretty soon it's going to be a week. But we already have plans for next year. But I also have to thank my allies and friends on the team at Project Censored, where I've been a director since 2010. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, teaching critical media literacy and covering the news that didn't make the news, analyzing why, highlighting the year's top independent news stories the corporate media missed, chose not to cover, censored, or otherwise distorted. We also celebrate the importance of solutions journalism and promoting media democracy in action. You can join us this fall, October 23rd and 24th, here at Ithaca College for the Union for Democratic Communications Conference, celebrating this milestone anniversary with our allies and friends in the academic world and the independent press. And I'd like to thank everyone on the Project Censored team and the Media Freedom Foundation board, where I'm president, and special shout out to TM Scruggs. So a big round of applause. So this year's Izzy Fest was a truly collaborative effort. It also included Society for Professional Journalists Region 1. Special thanks to the National SPJ President, Chris Vaccaro, who was here the last 2 days, participating in events and panels and meeting with students. The SPJ held their Mark of Excellence Award here, which was, again, an amazing thing that we did. Adam Sennett, Region 1, is here. Misha Gerakoulis of Project Censored was a huge help and liaison in helping bring SPJ here with us. And so I'd like to give a big round of applause for all of those people. I also want to say that Mark of Excellence Awards today at Ithaca College, I want to congratulate all the winners and those nominated for such high honors for student journalists. And of course, I want to congratulate the Ithaca College, the Ithacan newspaper, that won several awards just this afternoon. And of course, a lot of this also came together because one of our graduating seniors has really been spearheading the SPJ efforts here and getting more and more students involved. So we're very grateful for Elle Wilcox and the Monday night crew for the Society of Professional Journalists. Izzy judges this year included Raza Rumi, Victor Picard, Esther Kaplan, Patricia Rodriguez, Robin Anderson, Eleanor Goldfield. We'll hear from Eleanor later tonight. And our first student cohort of Izzy judges, which included Vivian Rose, Elle Wilcox, Jackie Vickery, Prakriti Panwar, and Ryan Johnson, with special thanks again to Marcy Sutherland, who also has been teaching in the education department all year while continuing her support for PCIM. And this year's expanded Izzy Fest would not be possible were it not for her and all of these student supporters. So amazing work to them, and we're very grateful for their involvement. I want to say that it's a very important step for us to include student cohorts, and so our 5 student cohort judges this year are graduating, and so you can find us in Park 257. If students are interested in the kind of work that we're doing, we want to hear from you, and we're going to need to have a new cohort next year. And it's important that these awards aren't just decided by people who've been around for 30 years or have credentials and so on. I'm not saying there's something bad with that. What I'm saying is that we really need to make conscious efforts to reach out and include other people, and particularly young people, to give them the opportunities to learn how these things happen, how they work, so that they can carry that baton and they can do those things on their own. And this cohort worked on their own, and they came up with amazing rankings of the stories, and their input on the judges and the winners this year was really interesting, and it was pretty profound. So I'm, again, really honored to be able to work with those kinds of students, and everything that we're doing now at the Park Center for Independent Media, as well as Project Censored, is really education-centric. It's about teaching people and empowering them to be part of the community and be tomorrow's leaders. And so I'm really privileged to have to be in the situation to both teach and learn from such amazing students. I would also like to thank the conference and event services team, Tara Gianfrate, and all of the people. The services here at the college have been amazing, and the food has been amazing. Of course, the tech and AV team are absolutely incredible. The cameras and the people running around here, that's Park Productions. Those are students here at the Park School at Ithaca College. So thank you. Devin Accardo at the Park Productions team, including Pranat Shah, Elijah Tucker, Jackson Brower, Maya DeGabrielle, Kaylee Sherman, Annabelle Deniston, Zachary Bricks, Brendan Noon, Maz Abukalaf, Millie Slagle, and Leila Marcelo Gomez. And for live streaming, we're live streaming the event. We thank Ari Kisaloff, who was faculty here at Ithaca College for a long time. Ari's in the back. Thank you, Ari. We'd also like to thank, it was the student cohort and the students that work with us at the Park Center that did all the tabling in the back and recruited all the people to come and invited the band, the musicians, and all the music. And so thank you very much for turning this into an even more celebratory event. Thank you very much for that. So keep clapping, because I got one more thing to say, and I want to thank all of you because you came out here on a beautiful day and Earth Day, and you're here to celebrate the importance of the independent press and tonight's Izzy winners. And so with that, I'm going to, as they used to say on the Looney Tunes cartoons on Saturday morning, on with the show. Right? So here we go. But please, I want to give everybody a round of applause from me to you. Thank you for being here. So the state of the free press, as we see, is grim, and we see attacks in the corporate media, we see attacks on the student press, we see the independent press struggling, nonprofit journalism being targeted, people being stalked, shot at, arrested, deported, and so we do have some grim times, as I mentioned, right? However, this is why we need a free press, and we need it more than ever, and we need to protect it on all fronts. 50 years ago, Carl Jensen founded Project Censored because he knew that journalism was the lifeblood of democracy. He argued that the news media, despite its increasingly corporate and commercial nature, can have a positive influence in the world, especially when it operates ethically and independently in the public interest. And one of my favorite lines from Carl, again, he encouraged journalism programs at colleges across the country to turn out more muckrakers and fewer buck takers. We're here to celebrate this year's winners again for the expanded Izzy Fest, and these independent journalists and outlets are not only inspiring, but also necessary if we're to maintain a functioning republic responsive to its members' needs. PCIM received more than 100 nominations for this year's Izzy's, which is double the number from only a few years ago. To me, this is a sign of a robust scene in the independent press, one that could grow and spread with increased public awareness and support. And so in that vein, and in this increased measures of support and celebration for independent media, I want to bring up the former just before me, Director Raza Rumi, my predecessor. He's going to talk a little bit about the history of PCIM, and this year, again, we had so many nominations that we returned to the practice of having some honorable mentions. So Raza Rumi served as the second director of the Park Center for Independent Media here at Ithaca College and taught in journalism and writing departments. Raza is a Pakistani writer and public policy specialist based in New York City. Currently, he's a distinguished lecturer at City University of New York. He is also visiting faculty at Brooks School of Public Policy, Cornell University, where he has taught courses in international development and public policy since 2016. He's the author of 4 books, and you can learn more at razarumi.com, but please give a warm welcome to Raza.
Thank you, Mickey, and it's a real pleasure to be back. It's homecoming of sorts because I spent a decade in Ithaca, and really honored to say a few words about the evolution of the center. I won't be long, I promise. It's a place where when I moved to Ithaca and to Ithaca College, one of the first people I met was Jeff Cohen, who's here, and my friend and mentor both. And, I was privileged to direct this center from 2018 to 2024. And, of course, I remain connected thanks to Mickey and his capable leadership. From the very beginning, the Park Center for Independent Media was built around a simple but powerful idea that independent media is not just something we study, it is essential to democracy itself. That may sound obvious today when journalism is under so much pressure from so many directions, but the center and its founders understood this very idea right at the start when the PCIM was being founded. So it created a space where students, faculty, journalists, and the public could engage with reporting that challenges power rather than accommodates it. And I do want to acknowledge that none of that would have been possible without the vision and support of the Park Foundation. Of course, I'm repeating what Mickey already said. Their commitment to independent journalism and public good made this center possible. And in particular, Adelaide Gomer, who's here this evening, and her support over the years has been generous, thoughtful, and deeply impactful, not just to PCIM, but to independent media across the nation. The foundation didn't just fund an institution, it helped nurture an idea whose influence continues to grow. Over time, what has been most remarkable is how students and the center have evolved over the years. The center's become not just a place for discussion or just having speakers, but a bridge that connects students and the academy with the world of nonprofit and independent journalism. At a time when many students are uncertain about the future of media, the Park Center has opened up another pathway for them. It shows them that journalism can still be a calling rooted in public service, accountability, and intellectual courage. And that exposure has had real tangible results. Many of our students have gone on to work in independent media sector and other places in the real world, in newsrooms, in nonprofits, podcasts, digital outlets, carrying with them a strong sense of purpose. That, to me, is one of the center's most meaningful legacies. But the impact goes beyond those who chose journalism as a career. The Park Center has helped shape a broader awareness across campus. It has given students across different departments and disciplines a deeper understanding that journalism is not just content, not just opinion, but a civic function. One of the few tools we have to hold the powerful accountable, to amplify voices that might otherwise be ignored, and to document truths that might otherwise be buried. In that sense, the center doesn't just teach media, it cultivates a deeper appreciation for why independent journalism matters in the society at large. And in many ways, Park Center remains unique across the nation. You don't have a center that exclusively focuses on independent media and supports it, and across the world. I tried to check that when I joined, and there were very few examples of this kind. There are very few places that bring together academic engagement, student exposure, professional mentorship, and a sustained commitment to independent media in this way. That distinctiveness matters even more now, as Mickey outlined, and we've been talking about that since yesterday. We owe a great deal to Jeff Cohen, whose founding vision and tireless work built this center with clarity and conviction. And I have every confidence that under Mickey Huff's leadership, the center will continue to grow, adapt, and shine in the years ahead. And of course, alongside student internships, the newsletter, speaker series, which have been growing over the years, one of the powerful marker is the Izzy Award itself. We have gathered this evening. It's a marker of credibility and courage. It represents a set of values. It's not just an award, because it honors journalism that refuses intimidation, resists simplification, and insists on telling difficult truths. And it reminds us of something fundamental, that without fearless journalism, democracy weakens, and the pursuit of social justice becomes even much harder. That has been Park Center's mission all along. It has grown, and it just not just to celebrate independent media, but to sustain it, to inspire the next generation, and remind all of us why it matters. And now, a few words on our honorable mentions for this year. As we will soon recognize the winners of the Izzy Award, it is equally important to acknowledge the work of Prism, 404 Media, and Dropsite News, outlets that in very different ways embody the spirit of independent journalism that this award celebrates. At a time when media ecosystems are under immense pressure, political, corporate, and algorithmic, these platforms have carved out space for reporting that is both rigorous and courageous. Prism has consistently centered on voices and communities that are often pushed to the margins, reminding us that journalism is not just about documenting power or power intrigues, but about challenging it and expanding who gets to speak. 404 Media, in a rapidly evolving digital landscape, has done something equally vital. It has interrogated the technologies shaping our lives, exposing the hidden infrastructure of surveillance, data exploitation, and platform control. In doing so, it has made the opaque much more visible. And Dropsite News has stepped into many difficult terrains, including conflict reporting, bringing depth, skepticism, and accountability to stories that are too often flattened or filtered through geopolitical interests. What unites these efforts is not just independence, but a commitment to truth-telling that resists simplification. They remind us that journalism at its best is an act of public service, one that informs, questions, and unsettles. In honoring them tonight, we are also reaffirming the importance of media landscape that is plural, fearless, and deeply committed to the public good. With that, thank you once again.
So we're going to get started with the formal part of the awards ceremony with our winners here this evening. Again, congratulations to the honorable mentions, and one of the members of those groups is here with us tonight, Laura Witt from Prism, and the Movement Media Alliance joined us here last year, and they are here this year, and they've been meeting with students and connecting with people for possible internships and so forth. So I'm really grateful for the Movement Media Alliance people for all the work that they do, and Project Censored is a proud member of their group. So again, thank you so much to everybody from MMA. At this point, I want to have our 5-student cohort of Izzy judges come up, and I want them to say a few words about themselves, because they're a really, really important part of that process, as I said. So with that, I would like to welcome to the stage. These folks are either graduated or graduating in about a couple of weeks. Welcome up Vivian Rose, Elle Wilcox, Jackie Vickery, Prakriti Panwar, and Ryan Johnson.
All right, I'm going to take the mic off. Okay, thank you all so much for joining us here tonight. This is such a special occasion, and we've been working so hard and dedicated to making this night as special as possible. Thank you for coming tonight as we honor this prestigious award to the most deserving independent reporters and outlets. My name is Vivian Rose, and I'm an editorial intern at Ms. Magazine and a media associate for PCIM. And I'm also one of the 5 student judges you see here for the 18th Annual Izzy Awards. These outlets that we honor here tonight uphold the life work of IF Izzy Stone with their integrity, dedication, and willingness to report the stories that often go unreported by legacy media. After decades of Izzy's iconic contributions to indie journalism, the Park Center of Independent Media has made it its life's work to honor his legacy. As we say all the time at PCIM, if Izzy Stone were alive today, he'd be writing on Substack. Our assumption not only underscores that good journalism must live and breathe by the current times, but that its practices must constantly adapt to an ever-changing media landscape. In short, we hope indie media outlets especially explore ways to expand their modes of engagement and education to reach as wide an audience as possible. The student cohort symbolizes a chance for the center to begin working on those crucial principles of journalism. We hope students continue to join the judging process and that more young people from all different backgrounds of race, class, and gender will want to have a seat at this very unique table. That way, we can continue to understand the media habits of a generation that listens to their news on podcasts and watches their news on documentaries and also on social media. It truly is the only way to help us at PCIM understand what the American story really is and how it's being independently made for us all.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here to celebrate the fantastic work of all of the awardees and everyone else in this room. My name is Ryan Johnson, and I'm a recent graduate of Ithaca College and a current publishing intern at The Nation magazine. To say that the Park Center for Independent Media has been the biggest help and resource I was able to utilize and experience these last 4 years would be an understatement. PCIM has not only helped me realize what I want to do, but who I want to be in the journalism industry. Through PCIM, I secured an internship at the Real News Network, which taught me about social media journalism and audience editing and introduced me to some of the most talented people working in independent journalism today. None of the opportunities I have today would have been possible without the perspective, encouragement, and education I received through the center. Being able to help judge these awards and interact with the impactful journalism that helps spread awareness and deliver real impact across communities has been an honor. Congratulations again to the winners whose work has inspired me to continue to seek out opportunities in independent media.
Hi everyone, my name is Jackie Vickery, and next month I will graduate from Ithaca College's Roy H. Park School of Communications with a Bachelor in Arts in Journalism. Over the past year, I had the privilege of serving as a research assistant at the Park Center for Independent Media, and I worked under the guidance of Distinguished Director Mickey Huff and Communications and Research Coordinator Marcy Sutherland. Through their mentorship, I came to understand my purpose as a journalist and what it truly means to practice this craft with integrity and independence. To be part of the first Izzy Awards' first ever cohort has been a truly special experience. Being able to work alongside my peers and engage directly with the legacy of IF Stone and the journalists who carry that spirit forward is a once in a lifetime opportunity that I will forever be grateful for. I am honored to be here today, representing not only the Park Center for Independent Media, but the next generation of journalists committed to pursuing independent reporting. It is a privilege to stand alongside so many who dedicate their work to protecting the free press and ensuring that the pursuit of truth remains a cornerstone of our democracy. Thank you for joining us for the 18th Annual Izzy Award.
Hi everyone, my name is Prakriti Panwar. I'm a senior journalism and economics double major, also graduating in May. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Ithaca College's award-winning independent newspaper. Being a part of the student cohort that judged the Izzy's has been a very special experience. It not only opened an avenue for our generation to have a say and contribute to this amazing legacy, but it also taught us a lot along the way. Going through all of the nominations was really tough. Each submission was an important part of the conversations we need to be having today. We may have had to pick a few, but it's clear that all journalists in this room and all publications in this room create a media ecosystem together that makes the landscape what it is. I'm grateful for the role we got to play in judging the Izzy's and the effort to diversify this process. It feels good to be heard even as some 20-something-year-olds. As student journalists, we are also very familiar with the challenges that the industry faces today. But opportunities like these, however, give us hope and make us an integral part of the process and the conversation by encouraging us to rise to these challenges stronger and more determined.
It's a lot of fun standing next to all of them. This is great. I'm soaking this up while I still can. Okay. My name's Elle Wilcox, and like my peers on the stage, I'm an Ithaca College journalism student. I got involved with PCIM last year by creating promotional content and activations for the center. I still do that this year, but also took part in the inaugural student cohort of Izzy Award judging. Once again, like my peers on the stage. To read, to watch, to listen to the submissions was the ultimate practice of being a student. We sought content that educated, that excited, and that made us want to help others. We then discussed this content among ourselves, recent students, and lifelong students, also known as independent media professionals. I spoke last year at the Izzy Awards, and while I was involved in a new role this year, I don't really have much new to say. This isn't because there aren't thoughts to be had about the world of independent media, but rather because my thoughts have stayed relatively consistent. Much like this industry's steady values of collaboration over competition, cause over cash, and connection over conflict. So, for the second time on an Izzy Award stage, on behalf of my fellow students, current and lifelong, we are looking forward to bringing these perspectives into our professional lives, but also into our personal lives, in order to encourage and support our peers to have those hard conversations, consider those other opinions, and understand that the teachings of the Park Center for Independent Media and engaging in critical media literacy can be and is for all. Whether you're an Izzy Award winner, congrats, editor of a corporate news outlet, consumer of every news headline, or consumer of none. Congratulations again to tonight's winners. Thank you for being a necessary and great example to us all.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. All right, so I have the very distinct honor of bestowing the award to the city. And so that goes to both Gwyn Hogan and to Heidi Chu, who unfortunately cannot be here today. But I will read just a little bit what I have here for them. The courageous spirit of I.F. Stone is alive and thriving in Gwyn Hogan and Heidi Chu of the city for breaking the story of ICE's use of 26 Federal Plaza in New York City as a detention center in May 2025. Their migrant-centered reporting showed readers some of the first photos of ICE arrests there, capturing the human story of these inhumane events. These series of groundbreaking articles led directly to reforms. So congratulations to Gwyn and to Heidi of the city. Yes, thank you so much.
I just want to, thank the Park Center so much for having us. It's such an honor to be here. And I do want to start by saying Heidi also was so excited to be here and got sick last minute. And a lot of this reporting I could not have done without her. She might be watching the live stream if she is. Hope you're feeling better out there. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the work that we did reporting on an ICE surge that happened largely focused on government buildings in New York City starting last spring. I did it, okay. So it was pretty quiet in the first few months of the Trump administration. And then in mid-May, I got a call, and somebody was like, ICE is in immigration court. And I was like, what? And I ran, and I couldn't see anything. Then I got another call, and they were like, ICE is in immigration court. And I ran again, I didn't see anything. And the third time, I got another call, and they were everywhere. And just to paint a picture for you, New York City has a massive immigration court system. We have 3 different government buildings where there's immigration courts on multiple floors. And 2 of these buildings are right next to each other, 26 Federal Plaza and 290 Broadway. And I proceeded to spend about 3 months every single day inside these buildings because in the first few days of this, ICE agents were in the lobbies taking people, they were wearing masks, they were in the hallways. I watched an arrest, they went into a bathroom and took somebody out of a bathroom. And for the first few days, I was sometimes the only witness to these arrests. And I was literally running around the building. Like I would watch an arrest and then I would run upstairs to the courtroom and be like, excuse me, judge, the person you said would be fine has just been arrested. Do you have a comment? And the judge was like, no. And I'm like, okay, thank you for that. And I included this photo because this is one of the first arrests that I watched. And you don't really know what is happening. Like, I wasn't prepared. And I was filming, I knew I had to document. And this man, I speak good Spanish, my French is not so great. And I was also, witnessing this sort of arrest happening, and I was trying to get some information. I'm like, sir, what's your name? And then I got this video of the arrest, and I played it back like 50 times after, and he told me his home address, I realized. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know what to do, so I just went there to find his family, thinking that maybe they were not gonna know what had happened to him. He had this court date, and he never came back. And that was at the beginning, right? I was the only person there. And this pattern, the more, I wrote a bunch of breaking news stories in the first few days, and reporters started showing up from photographers. Now at this point, I'm sure you've seen photos of these arrests that have been covered by major news outlets everywhere. But while this was happening, about the third week of this, I was bouncing between courthouses with all these other reporters, and a source of mine came up to me and said, they're taking people from that building too. And it was literally a third building in this little tiny block of government buildings. It was a very nondiscreet little office. I didn't know what was going on. And it turned out to be an ICE subcontractor was having check-ins there and arresting people. So I spent a night there watching about a dozen arrests. I did a story that day. And the next day, a bunch of reporters showed up, and we proceeded to watch dozens of arrests, including the arrest of parents with kids. We watched, family separations kind of in real time over the course of that day. So where were all these people going after they were getting arrested? And it turned out that in addition to being arrested inside of these immigration courthouse, ICE had a floor, and now we know multiple floors of holding cells. And as the arrest surge started in May into June, we started hearing reports of conditions deteriorating in these cells. These cells are not meant for long-term stays. They were meant for under 12 hours, so there's no beds. There's almost no infrastructure to provide food or water. There are toilets in the room, so if you have to pee or poop, you're doing it in front of whatever number of people are there. And we had all these anecdotes, some of them that stand out in my mind now a year later. There was a woman who, 21-year-old high school student who spent days covered in her own menstrual blood because she was given one pad to split between a room of people, of women. There was a story, there was no water, so there was a story that the men were so thirsty that the guard made them line up and he was squirting water into their mouths. But, stories, you kind of need a video, right? So I got the first video. And this was a story that we've been working on. How could we refute what ICE was saying? ICE was saying people were not spending a long amount of time here. This is not a detention center, this is a processing site. And they would categorically deny any report of inhumane treatment. And then we published this video, which was then reported on by many other outlets. And it showed what conditions were like. It showed dozens of men lying down on little aluminum blankets. One of the men is we're being treated like animals. And we also did something with data in this story, which I don't know if you've heard of the Deportation Data Project. Thank you, Deportation Data Project. They have been suing ICE for data, and it is an invaluable tool to independent and local reporters all over the country because they have arrest-specific data for every single arrest. Most of the arrests. Obviously there's some inconsistencies in data, but this is the best picture that we have of what's going on. So my colleague Heidi, who again couldn't be here, she was sitting with the detention data, which sort of shows every time somebody stays in a particular facility, there's an in time and an out time. And she was able to figure out, well, if we know how many people are in here at any given time, we could figure out how many people were here at once and how long they've been here. So we were basically able to say there were way more people than ICE was saying, and they were exceeding even their own capacity that they were saying had. So there were hundreds of people passing through this facility and many, many, many staying overnight. And also the amount of time that they were spending. So it's a little confusing to see in this, but we had people who were there for 8 days. We had people who were there for 6 days, right? In these deplorable, inhumane conditions. There was a lawsuit that came out, activists sued, immigrant advocates sued, and they had a lot of documentation from different affidavits, and they included this video, links to this video. They did link to the New York Times, who reported it after us, but that's just what happens. and about a week later, a judge put a TRO in effect, a temporary restraining order, which is still in place today. That matter is going to trial, but the judge basically put strict capacity restrictions on ICE, and it's not great now either, but it's way better than it was at the beginning. But wait, do I have enough time? Okay. Here's more data. Again, Heidi she knows. So the immigration courthouse arrest continued, and it's sort of after a couple of weeks of this, we were like, okay, this is what is happening here. This is ICE's tactic here, and it's not what Minneapolis looks like. It's not what Chicago looks like. But how can we measure that? And that's where we started consulting with an independent mathematician. His name's Joseph Gunther. He does a lot of data immigration stuff. And he figured out you could combine two data sets, the EOIR data, which is the immigration review data, with the ICE arrest. And if you could find somebody who had a court date with the same identifying details as somebody who had an arrest date on the same day, that's, with a pretty degree of certainty, an immigration courthouse arrest. Da-da, da-da. We spent a lot of time fact-checking it. We did our own analysis, et cetera. Heidi's amazing. And we were able to basically do a preliminary count of the arrests happening here and prove that this was happening in New York City more than any other major city. And, LA has a lot of immigration courts, but that is not what was happening in LA. It was happening in New York. And at a certain point last summer, half of our arrests were happening in court, basically. So just kind of taking a step back, even now, over the past year, we now have arrest data through March. That summer was our surge so far. I think things can change at the drop of a hat, but that spike in June was kind of our Minneapolis, and it looked so different, right? It was happening concentrated in these offices, and particularly in this building, 26 Federal Plaza, where you can walk in and go to an ICE check-in and you could get arrested there. You could walk into the 2 floors of immigration courthouses, you could get arrested there. Now you can walk into the USCIS offices and get arrested there, and everybody was then getting taken to the 10th and 9th floors where you're held. So this building became the symbol of ICE enforcement in New York City. And obviously, what is the human impact of these surges? Just to paint you a picture of what those early weeks were like, if you walked around 26 Federal Plaza, it was like an invisible bomb had gone off, because if you were walking quickly, it just looked like any other day in Lower Manhattan, right? Everybody's going to work. But if you walked slowly, people were crying everywhere. And that is how I met a lot of people who I did stories on. Just like, you stop and talk to one person who's crying, and 3 more people will be like, my aunt was taken, my son was taken, my mother was taken, all around this building. And that's actually how I met Jessica, whose husband, John Carlos, was taken in immigration court. She's pictured right there. She was just on a stoop sobbing, and she didn't know what to do. There was no roadmap for what to do. This other story that I focused on, a young man from Guinea, who his family found out that he was gay and was basically going to have him killed, and he fled overnight and was applying for asylum. He was living his, LGBTQ dream in New York City. He'd gotten married, and he was taken to court. And a year later, John Carlos has been deported, and Mamadou is still in detention in Texas. And when I think about the impact of what this was, I found these photos in my phone, because after we did this story, people were printing it out and taping it around the building. And that to me is so cool. It's like we were informing people in real time, and people were organizing around it, immediately. It got to a point where I would, walk through court, and the court watchers would be like, oh, are you going to Hogan? Are you good? I felt like a celebrity inside that building only. Because even though I was alone in the first few days of reporting, an entire ecosystem of activism built up around that. There were, obviously elected officials visiting these buildings, all these little retirees who were taking notes in the courtrooms, a whole massive response to what was going on. And we informed a lot of that in real time. And I'll end on something a little petty, but we sort of set the tone for the coverage. These are two of many examples of outlets that had to basically re-report what we had already reported. So I think, in independent media, there is so many times where you're going to do something that nobody else will focus on. But in this case, we were setting the tone for the whole city's coverage of this issue. And it happened because, we're a very stealth team at the city. There's no middle management. So basically, I assigned myself. I called my editor. I was like, I think this is happening. And he was like, go. And that became a beat. And that is sort of the flexibility and independence that you have at an outlet like the city, where you can just kind of focus on what feels most important at a specific time. So yeah, that's all. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It is my pleasure right now to introduce Eleanor Goldfield. She's going to bestow the next award on the Izzy winner. Eleanor is a creative radical journalist and filmmaker. Her two documentaries focus on environmental and labor issues, To the Trees and Hard Road of Hope. Mutual aid and community organizing are cornerstones of Eleanor's work and personal life, informing both her journalistic and artistic projects. Her written and photojournalism has appeared in independent publications in the United States and around the world. She's one of the 2020 recipients of the Women and Media Award presented by the Women's Institute for Freedom of the Press. Currently, Eleanor is co-host, senior producer, and engineer of the Project Censored show, Lucky Me, and also co-host of the podcast Common Censored, along with Lee Camp. This was her first year as an Izzy judge. Please welcome my colleague and friend and badass journalist, Eleanor Goldfield.
Thanks, y'all. All right. So the first time that I went to Texas, I was stopped by a bored cop in West Texas with a car full of gear, an Egyptian bass player, a 6'5" black drummer, and a drunk guitar player. I'll just say that we were late for sound check. The next time that I went to Texas, I met with folks and embedded with folks who were leaving critical supplies like water in the desert for refugees. Several of them had had violent run-ins with Border Patrol, but they kept coming back. Texas, like many southern states, including my home state of North Carolina, is bipolar. It offers up oftentimes at once the best and worst that humans are capable of. The stereotypical tropes of racism, misogyny, colonialism, countered by the resilience, the truly epic beauty of the human spirit. And in that liminal space between the machine and those who rage against it are stories. The stories that we are force-fed by corporate media, the stories that are buried, the stories that are whispered, the stories that are screamed over concentration camp walls, wrapped around bottles of water along with prayers for safety. It's no accident that in times like these, that I like to call a return to the bloodied roots of this nation state, storytellers are in the crosshairs. Those who uplift the lived experiences that chafe against that singular whitewashed story of the United States are dangerous to the status quo. And this is perhaps doubly so in the South, in places like Texas. And the fact that the Texas Observer has not only refused to comply with mandates of fascist propaganda often emanating from their home place, but that it has withstood the propagation of news deserts, that's a testament not only to those who make up the Texas Observer, but also to the communities that they serve and uplift, that have mutualistically showed up to ensure that this storytelling platform can persevere. That the stories that they dig up, investigate, uplift, and share are of great importance and need to be protected. Because these stories are fuel. They are a reminder that the gaslighting of the system is not truth, that we are not alone in our oppression, in our heartache and soul shattering at the gross injustices of our times, and perhaps most importantly, that we have agency, we have power. The journalism that the Texas Observer has published that uplifts stories by those directly harmed by Texas policies, the investigative reporting on ICE and CBP, the ever-failing and violent war on drugs, the intersections of environmental harm and border militarization, the calling out of a racist propaganda, of capital punishment. These are the stories that shape and sharpen our tools, not only in the fight, but in the build. They imagine a world outside of the one that we've been handed, the one that we have been programmed to normalize and perpetuate. As co-executive director of Scalawag magazine, Deshaun Harrison said to me in an interview not long ago, quote, "There's no revolution without the South." And in the places that are most often the punchline of jokes, the shake my head disdain for a nation going from whence it came, these are precisely the places we must look to for the future. And the storytellers, as they always have been, will be the ones to light emergent paths for radical solidarity, to map a future by contextualizing our present and our history, to give us that fuel to traverse those liminal spaces that can feel at first as harsh and unwelcoming as West Texas. Because we cannot know what will happen if we fight back, but we know exactly what will happen if we don't. And it is therefore an honor to bestow this Izzy Award to those fighting the good fight, to Executive Director Lauren Lynch and Editor-in-Chief Gus Bova of the Texas Observer.
I'm Gus Bove. I'm the editor of the Texas Observer. For the last couple years, I've been there for 10 years now, reporter, assistant editor, then my current role. And thanks to everyone for having us, to Mickey and Marcy and everyone who put this together the last couple days. It's been really nice. And to those of you who are locals, I've really enjoyed your town. It's extremely beautiful and a nice change of pace from Texas in a number of ways. When I got the news that we'd won this award, what pleased me the most was that it's not just for one writer or one story, but for the Texas Observer as a whole. We're a small outlet. We're about 9 staff, and we've always hung our hat on euphemisms like scrappy or punches above our weight. By my count, I'm the 25th editor of the Texas Observer, which is a testament as much to our longevity as to the short tenures of most of my predecessors, as the place is scraped by through near-death experiences for most of its existence. We started in 1954. That's 1 year after I.F. Stone launched his famous weekly newsletter, and a year before The Village Voice, just for context. And I don't think anyone at the time really could imagine that we'd still be here. We started as a liberal weekly paper aimed at the progressive wing of the Democratic Party at a time when Texas was a one-party Democratic state. So the progressive wing meant opposing segregation and not believing that every union was a communist front. To survive financially, we soon cut back to a bi-weekly paper, which we remained for 50 years, turning into a nonprofit along the way. Today, we publish in print bi-monthly. We're a glossy magazine now. And we devote more of our limited resources to difficult investigative reporting than before. Which brings me to the package of stories that we submitted for the Izzy Award. I'll tell you about a couple because I think they say something about where we are in Texas and where we are as a country. Last February, one of our regular freelance contributors, Stephen Monticelli is his name, let me know that he'd identified a Dallas ICE Assistant Chief Counsel, which is a lawyer who prosecutes the deportation cases, as the operator of a Twitter account called Glomar Responder. This account had many, many posts, including, forgive me for repeating here, but all blacks are foreign to my people, and migrants are all criminals. Among these many posts, this prosecutor had left a long stream of breadcrumbs that, thanks to open source intelligence techniques, led our reporter to his identity. The evidence was pretty much overwhelming that we had the guy. We had it down to like the specific type of dog breed that him and his spouse were obsessed with, and exactly what school he'd gone, basically every job the guy had ever had. But when you're doing these stories, you have to entertain every possibility. For example, what if someone was pretending to be him running an anonymous account? You just don't know. You have to run it down. So we sent the reporter to the immigration courthouse, where he sat behind the guy and watched as the man took out his phone in court on the job and posted to his anonymous Twitter account while in the court hearing. And so then I finally said, okay, we're good to publish. And I thought, we, the little old Texas Observer, we may not be able to topple our governor no matter how many times we expose his cronyism. We may not be able to take down Elon Musk no matter how much we expose the labor abuses of his companies. But this guy's getting canned. Well, they put him on leave for a year, then let him back on the job. A Dallas congressman tried in an open committee hearing to reduce his salary to $1, but that failed, and that was that. Another story we submitted in our package was a deep TikTok-style investigation of a mass drug overdose event in Austin. The story showed as clearly as possible, I think, how inhumane and frankly stupid our state's criminal ban on fentanyl testing strips is. And basically what had happened was a bad batch of crack had gotten loose in a community of users who didn't even normally use opiates or opioids, and it was contaminated with fentanyl, and it led to a rash of deaths. And strips are an obvious solution. It's a crime to possess those in our state. A Republican lawmaker, believe it or not, tweeted out the story, filed a bill to legalize the strips. It passed our state house, and it died in our even more conservative state senate. And that was that. Yet another of the stories exposed a multi-agency raid on a supposed Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang party just outside Austin. The story exposed that as an utter lie. We talked to a significant percentage of the people who were arrested and deported. We got basically all the public records that were available for the raid. And we showed pretty definitively that most likely none, if not close to none, of the members had any affiliation with this gang. But the civil immigration system, especially under Trump, doesn't actually care about that. Once they were in the pipeline, that was all that mattered, and they were, for the most part, all deported anyway. And that too was that. So this may not seem like the most compelling pitch for what we do, but I tell these stories just to acknowledge the times we're living in. It's extremely hard for original reporting to have the kind of immediate, concrete impact we wish it would, at least in Texas, and also if you're aimed at the federal government as a whole right now. Our Texas state government and our federal government have simply grown very resistant to accountability. Often we must content ourselves with knowing that the work was solid, that we were right, and that exposing the truth is a good in and of itself. We plant seeds without knowing when they'll bear fruit. The journalism gods work in mysterious ways, etc. Most importantly, we keep going, and we are not deterred. Just last week, I'm proud to say, we published a story about the superintendent of the Houston Independent School District, which is the largest school district in our state. This will require a little bit of explanation for y'all, but 3 years ago, the state carried out a hostile takeover of this school district based on some standardized test scores, deposed the elected school board, and installed a hand-picked superintendent who was previously running a charter school network. Our state likes to do this sort of thing. It's yet another way to stick it to our liberal big cities and to wreck the public school system, essentially. Well, it turns out that superintendent was still moonlighting for his old charter school network with a contract for $30,000 per quarter. And it turns out there is a law in Texas about this, and it turns out that this was almost certainly illegal. And after we obtained the contract from a source and sent inquiries to the district and the state-appointed school board, you know what happened? The contract got canceled. So now, Texas taxpayers are still paying the salary of a state-imposed charter school advocate who's loathed by the local teachers union, but at least he can't moonlight for another 6 figures on the side while he takes that salary. And that's something at least, so we at the Texas Observer keep going. I'll turn over to Lauren.
Hey everybody, my name is Lauren Lynch. I'm the executive director of the Texas Observer. As Gus so well stated, much of the impact our stories have don't make it to the point of creating lasting change in Texas, as they ultimately get squashed under the yoke of the power in the state. Representative of the sheer size of Texas, for better or worse, usually worse, what happens in our state can have an outsized effect on the rest of the country. As Molly Ivins said, Texas is the national laboratory for bad government. As a native Texan who left the state at a young age, eventually landing in progressive media in New York City, I never imagined myself returning to the state so reviled for its archaic and often cruel policies. But by the time the opportunity came to join the Texas Observer as its development director, 1 year into Trump's first term, I had come to realize that it was that kind of reporting, those stories that shine any amount of light on the kind of governing that was happening in Texas, and still is happening in Texas, and is accepted by many in the state without question. That's the kind of stories that I will shout about from the rooftops. I will knock on all the doors. I will yell it till I'm blue in the face, that this is the reporting that we need, that we must have at times like this. And I'll say it all with my hand held out like this, please. So y'all have never heard any of my jokes before, so I can tell you that I always say that I stopped being a reporter because I hated asking overly personal questions. For some reason, asking for money is just a little easier. But I do say it's a joke, but at the end of the day, it's true. And Gus and the rest of our small but mighty team make the job of convincing people to support The Observer relatively easy. We're so incredibly honored to be here tonight, to be recognized by the Park Center for Independent Media with this Izzy Award. I'm now 2.5 years into my current role with The Observer, now over 3 years past its brush with death. The work we're producing now feels even more critical than it did all those years ago. And I see that in our community of readers, those that helped us get through the financial crisis in 2023, and likely a few other ones before that too. I see it in the Houston superintendent's losing his moonlighting contract. As much as I see it in all those stories, that created impact that ultimately got squashed anyway, because it meant we were causing enough good trouble to annoy someone important. Congratulations to our fellow winners tonight, and thank you again to the Park Center for Independent Media, to Mickey Huff, to Marcy Sutherland, and all the judges for this very distinguished honor.
It's now my honor to bring up the next person who will announce or bestow the award on our next Izzy winner. I would like to, and I have the honor and privilege of introducing to you all Maximilian Alvarez. And Max, yeah, it's true. Max is a brilliant and fearless independent journalist that really goes places and tells stories the corporate media just won't. And he shared an Izzy Award last year for his reporting with Steve Mellon from the Pittsburgh Union Progress on the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, that continues to degrade the lives of people who live there. And Max has continued to tell that story long after the corporate media moved on to the next disaster spectacle circus, the next sacrifice zone, as Max describes them, not caring about what happens in the aftermath. Max has dual PhDs in history and comparative literature from the University of Michigan and has been published by Truth Out, The Nation, In These Times, Boston Review, The Baffler, and many other independent outlets. He's currently the editor-in-chief of The Real News Network in Baltimore and host of Working People, a podcast about the lives, jobs, dreams, and struggles of the working class today. Please welcome Max Alvarez to the stage.
All right, gang. How we doing, Izzy Awards? How we feeling? Okay. Let's go. We're nearing the end. The bar is getting prepped, but we have important work to do here. First and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you to Mickey, to Marcy, the incredible students, everyone at the Park Center. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for doing what you do. Let's give one quick round of applause for them one more time. So this is going to be rare for me, but I'm going to try to make this short and sweet, right? Because, after all these years working in independent media, I only just got to meet Abby Martin in person earlier this year when The Real News hosted the Baltimore premiere of Abby's incredible, powerful, Izzy Award-winning documentary, Earth's Greatest Enemy. But after having done so many interviews and live streams together the past few years, it really did feel like this was not the first time that we had ever met in person. The same way that it's felt meeting so many of you here this week. And there's something really beautiful about that. For all the horrendous things that have been wrought upon us, our brains, and our societies by the 21st century digital era. For more on that, see my speech yesterday. I won't terrify everyone about it now. But the point is, media can still be a force for good, for connecting us and bringing us together, out of alienation and social isolation, into shared space, shared struggle, a shared commitment to truth and justice and life, and a shared refusal to accept the way things are as the only way they have to be. It's what brought us all here together tonight. And even though it meant she couldn't be here with us tonight, it's what Abby is doing right now, bringing people together across the country and around the world to screen and watch and talk about this vital documentary. meeting with people in real life, in person, and using media to arm and empower us to get off the sidelines, to stop watching the world burn with 3D glasses and get in the fight to save it. And that is why Abby and Earth's Greatest Enemy, that is what Abby and Earth's Greatest Enemy do. That's what she and her co-director, collaborator, and husband Mike Preisner do at the Empire Files. That is why Abby is such a legend in the world of independent media and such a deserving winner of the Izzy Award. But there's another reason, and it also, I think, has to do with why it felt so familiar meeting Abby for the first time. You know, for all she has done and all she has accomplished, I recognize in her immediately a soul twin from back home. Another fiery kid from California, born just 2 years apart from me, with an ocean of kindness in her soul, a rebellious blood that flows through her, and a great, big, rebellious heart that she continues, like me, and like a lot of Californians I know, to wear our hearts on our sleeves no matter how much the world hurts us. That's one of the things that makes Abby so special, so mesmerizing, such a passionate, forceful voice for truth. But it's also the fact that she's been doing that consistently, year after year, outlet after outlet, war after war, right? Even when it costs her a lot, and when it costs her job, even when, it draws the ire of her enemies. When she messes up, she owns up to it. But she keeps reporting the truth. And again, as a fellow Californian who grew up in the era of the Iraq War, I just have to say, we were not all like that. I recognize how special she is because it was a dark place 4 years ago. A lot of leftists and people today try to say like, oh yeah, I was never for the Iraq War. We were. Our family was bought hook, line, and sinker, right? It took a lot of deprogramming to find my way out of that darkness. And it's because of that that I recognize the heroism of someone like Abby at the same time that I didn't know shit about shit and the world was beginning to crack apart, did what she could with the media that was available to tell the truth and to fight back against the powers that be. And she has done that consistently throughout her entire career, and she has done that beautifully with this vital documentary. And with that, I want to give a huge congratulations to the great Abby Martin for winning this award. Again, when everything in our society is all image first and memory last, and everyone feels like they can brand themselves into something they never were, you cannot buy the kind of credibility that comes with being consistent and principled even when no one's watching. And that's who Abby Martin is. And let's take a quick look at the trailer for Earth's Greatest Enemy.
Where we're heading is extremely grim. So we have to brace ourselves for what's coming.
There are still many secrets. The water on the base was contaminated, hence all the dead babies. Oh, shit.
These toxic chemicals are in the blood of my people.
They have littered our land with bombs.
Fire in the hole!
We used to have a lot of animals. Just keep quiet. Do you hear a bird?
The United States military is the #1 polluter in the world.
I have not authorized this.
The military is untouchable.
Let me take a look at the picture.
They consider themselves above the law.
They're filming us.
The military being the single largest consumer of fossil fuels on the planet, how can they be given a free pass?
The emissions from the military should be exempt. Do you agree with that?
I want to say thank you to our National Guard.
We must stop this violent death machine if we want to survive on this earth.
The ships, the guns,
the planes. This is the greatest assembly of power that the world has ever seen. And we haven't finished yet.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you for letting me speak remotely. And my sincere apologies for not being able to be there in person for this wonderful event with all of you. I really, really wish I could, and I hope I see you guys all soon. So let me just start by saying how deeply honored I am to receive this incredible award. IF Izzy Stone. I mean, look, Stone's legacy represents the kind of unwavering journalism I've always aspired to practice, the kind of journalist I've always aspired to be, someone who's adversarial to power, someone who doesn't bend to official narratives, someone who doesn't kowtow to the status quo, but most importantly, someone who was biased for the truth, for the people, on behalf of marginalized communities and their movements. I love that Izzy was a proud socialist. It inspires me as someone who's constantly having to explain why I'm explicitly anti-capitalist, why I'm an anti-imperialist journalist, and why that doesn't impact the credibility of my storytelling. Back when Izzy was fighting for the truth, I mean, there was the capacity still to carve out his own space in a field that was, ultimately captured by state propaganda, extreme anti-communist political repression. But still, I mean, there was more of a space than there is today. It was small, but there was still space. And now it is increasingly bleak, as we all know. I mean, the oversaturation with bad information, bad propaganda, inundation with falsehoods, this construction of an artificial reality curated to us, forced down our throats by these tech overlords who are not only sitting on these interlocking boards of directorates with all these other corporations, but profiting off the destruction and wanting us to be brain rotted and paralyzed with media instead of using media to empower and activate us. There's no real investigative reporting being done because there's no incentive, right, in this system. The incentive is the opposite. In fact, if you lie, if you create artificial constructs, if you fearmonger about culture wars and trans people, if you deny the Gaza genocide, you excel. You ascend, you fail upwards like Barry Weiss. And under capitalism, the noose continues to tighten, and journalists are getting fired in mass. AI taking over, the space is continuing to shrink, getting stolen or co-opted by the right wing. And of course, over-competed, over-sensationalized by the person trying to bait the algorithm better and get the most clicks for cash. So, of course, this type of environment is not conducive to journalism, any journalism for that matter, not just long-form investigative journalism, but it's just not marketable. There's no packaged solution, there's no easy sell, there's no incentive, there's no reward. But we don't do this work to get rewards or recognition. We do it because it's right. We do it because it needs to be done. And I guess that's why it's so incredible to get this recognition, to get this reward or award, because I've never really had this recognition over the course of my journalistic career. And it's really, really, really meaningful to receive this award for the Park Center of Independent Media, because the Park Center, I feel like, is doing something revolutionary by simply elevating media in independent journalism as a public good, at a time when all of these spaces are being completely squeezed from the top to the bottom. And so just to be recognized by such a prestigious institution means everything to me, because this is such an incredibly dark moment. We see journalists hunted right before our very eyes in Palestine and Lebanon and Iran, unprecedented numbers for doing the most essential work imaginable, for doing the bare minimum, documenting reality. But we're living through this broader collapse, of course, where truth tellers are marginalized, they're smeared, they're criminalized, they're deplatformed, they're economically suffocated for just challenging systems of power. We see the intensifying crackdown on journalism under Trump. I mean, I just saw him threaten a journalist who didn't toe the narrative for the Iran war, saying that they were committing treason. What is the punishment for treason? I mean, this political culture is based on intimidation, it's spectacle, it's the destruction of a shared reality, right? That's what kills me the most, is this degradation of a consensus of what reality is. I became a journalist out of necessity from the failures of the war on terror, the failures of the media, the failures of the institutions of journalism. And it was through that work that I came across the work of Project Censored. First through former director Peter Phillips, then Mickey Huff, of course. And something clicked for me, I think, in a way that they talked about media propaganda and censorship, that censorship in this country isn't this dramatic act of book burning or, black banning, or just drawing a line through words and calling it censorship. It's omission, it's erasure, it's a systemic sidelining and marginalizing of these stories. And Project Censored kind of illuminated that invisible architecture of silence, right? Of how it works, how it operates, what goes unreported, what goes distorted, why, right? And that's just as clarifying as the headline news. And I think it's so perfectly exemplified in the way that the corporate media covers Palestine today. It could be, the biggest story in the world for 3 years ongoing, but never told in the right way. This was my beacon, I think my guiding light for having critical media literacy, using media as a reclamation for our narratives, our voices, our movements. We know that it doesn't matter what issue you care about. If you don't have the platform to tell it, no one's going to hear it. And so Project Censored's kind of voluminous body of work and research was an intrepid kind of tool for me, the standard bearer for me to continue my work, which led me down my path as a journalist, ultimately as a filmmaker, and what continued to, just guide me to follow these stories and continue to cover really, really unreported things about war and empire and the communities forced to bear the consequences of this imperialist aggression. And that's what leads me to this film being acknowledged today. With Earth's Greatest Enemy, that meant investigating one of the most suppressed and revealing realities of our time. The U.S. military's enormous role in environmental devastation, climate destruction, and the contamination and suffering imposed on the global population as a result. This is the kind of story that is central to our public understanding, our collective formation of how we operate as a society, yet it is invisibilized. It's completely under the radar. And Barry Sanders in the film, see what you see, don't be duped, see what's right in front of your eyes. These are the stories that get buried because it implicates the most protected, most sacrosanct institutions of our time on Earth. The pillar of propaganda, the myth that underpins American society, that this is a benevolent empire acting with human rights and democracy. Going on tour with the film at a moment when this kind of naked colonialism is laid bare, the explicit stated purpose of this neo-colonialism, pillaging, plundering for oil, the dropping of pretense of any sort of, benevolent formation. People are starved for the truth. They're completely ready to hear it. They need a systemic and holistic understanding of the machinations of U.S. empire, the imposition of global capitalism. They want answers about why the law of the jungle reigns today, why this cruel savagery is going unchecked, and most importantly, how do we channel our rage and anger and use media not to become paralyzed and brain rotted, but to become empowered, motivated to act, build community, and organize effectively. So, to receive this recognition in Izzy Stone's name from the Park Center at this moment is profoundly meaningful. Look, after years of attacks, smears, misrepresentation, it's incredible to be recognized by an institution committed to real journalism. It means everything to me. Izzy Stone is not a relic from another era. It may represent a different time of journalism, but this is a living challenge to all of us to be braver, to dig deeper, to continue to hold truth as a standard bearer, to fight for to sacrifice for, to always keep fighting, even when the costs are very high, not because we know we'll win, but because we know we have to, because we have to try, because the truth has the power to change the world, and we can't let the present confines dictate to us what is not possible. We can't let the present kill the possibilities, not only kill the truth, but our imagination of a better world that we know that the truth can usher in. Thank you so much, all of you. Really appreciate the honor.
You heard one of the themes there, and of course you've been hearing it all night, and Abby mentioned the importance of critical media literacy, and I would be remiss if I did not mention one of our other co-sponsors here this evening, and they've been co-sponsors and supporters of the Park Center and of my work since I got here, and I want to give a big shout out to Cindy Scheib and Chris Sperry and their team at Project Look Sharp. Cindy founded this 30 years ago, and we congratulate them on their incredibly important work promoting media literacy education. So thank you, Cindy and Chris. Well, we are at that time in the schedule, that time of our program, where we have a surprise to share, and it is a very, very incredible moment here for me to be able to bestow this award on our next recipient. And in fact, this award is different than just the Izzy Award. The Izzy Hall of Fame is reserved, right? It is an occasional honor reserved for the greatest and most productive journalists of our era. People that don't just tell the difficult stories, but tell them enough and in such a way that they really do make a difference, right? But they do it over and over and over in different ways, in different places, and it's an incredible thing to do. So this is only the fourth time in 18 years someone has been inducted into the Izzy Hall of Fame, who include independent media luminaries like Amy Goodman, Jeremy Scahill. It's been a decade since anyone has been inducted into the Izzy Hall of Fame. And this year, after talking with our Izzy judges and student cohort, I floated the idea of something that I thought it was time to do, and everyone enthusiastically agreed and said, absolutely, 100%, this person exemplifies what it means to be in the Izzy Hall of Fame. This year, we honor the incredible work and incredible career of none other than Jeff Cohen. As a media critic, he founded Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, FAIR, in 1986 in their publication Extra. And me growing up in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my parents I was fortunate enough that they had a lot of books and magazines around, but they didn't have these independent alternative magazines around. And the kind of place where I grew up was a working class community. Didn't hear a lot of people talking about what was going on in the world. And we had a lot of access to corporate media, establishment media, but we didn't really get to hear the voices of independent press and independent media. And I remember that it was when I was graduating high school in 1989 that I discovered these kinds of publications, many of them now winners or producing winners of the Izzy Award. And Jeff Cohen's work, was super influential to me in my life. And as was the work of Project Censored, right? But I found Jeff's work in FAIR before I found Carl Jensen and Peter Phillips, because their first book wasn't until 1993, and the Project Censored work was published in the independent weeklies, and there wasn't one where I was growing up, so I didn't hear about it. But I was fortunate enough to stumble into Jeff Cohen and FAIR, and it really changed the trajectory of where I went in my life and career, and made me want to be a media critic and deconstruct propaganda. And interesting, Project Censored was founded 10 years before FAIR. But again, his work has influenced so many of us in younger generations, I said including me. And I know that I, along with a lot of people who've had the honor of they've had the honor of working with him, would not be doing what they're doing today if not for this inspiring work in Jeff's long career in independent media, including his work right here at the Park Center for Independent Media. An ardent supporter of independent media, Jeff also forayed into the corporate world as a commentator and senior producer for the iconic Phil Donahue at MSNBC. That program was canceled on the run-up to the Iraq War in 2003 for daring to air anti-war views. Gasp, right? That program was canceled, right? Every time that they would they would want to have an anti-war guest, the corporate media, the corporations that owned the bomb makers, GE, right? The warmongers in the military-industrial complex that owned these kinds of outlets. They said, well, if you have one advocate against the war, you've got to have 3 or 4 some for it, right? To counter some bias, and while certainly supporting their own pro-war bias. Jeff detailed these experiences in one of his 5 books called Cable News Confidential. In 2008, he became the first director of the Park Center for Independent Media and associate professor of journalism, where he served for a decade, retiring in 2018. He was integral to launching the Izzy Award here at Ithaca College, and I wouldn't be here bestowing this award on him if it wasn't for his career and all the work that he has done. Jeff went on to co-produce the documentary about I.F. Stone, All Governments Lie. If you missed the Izzy tour this afternoon as part of Izzy Fest, you missed a big thing. Amazing stories that Jeff can tell about the importance of independent journalism and I.F. Stone. We're going to get that on recording, Jeff. More recently, he was also a producer behind the film Digital Tsunami, Big Tech, Big AI, and Big Brother that just screened as part of the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival. He's co-founder of Roots Action, author, columnist, educator, critic, promoter of press freedom, and informed public engagement. He's an all-around raconteur. The legacy of his important work continues across many platforms and institutions, and indeed, he is still doing what he does best, critiquing corporate media and corporate influence on power while bolstering the impact of the independent press and promoting true participatory democracy. Please welcome the next inductee into the Izzy Hall of Fame, Jeff Cohen.
This is very unexpected. Yesterday I was bragging about how I would be able to just enjoy the Izzy Award in the audience without having to get up and say anything or host the event. I didn't realize I was getting this till a few hours ago. The first journalism prize I ever won was for a book that I co-authored 30 years ago. And I was pretty proud of getting that honor. I wrote the book with Norman Solomon. I was honored because the judges were so impressive, including Jessica Mitford. But the award's name was the Hugh Hefner First Amendment Award. It came from the Playboy Foundation. So Norman and I were a little squeamish, and we decided the only thing we could do was take the prize money and donate it to women's organizations and feminist projects. So it's great to get an honor named after I.F. Stone instead of Hugh Hefner. The I.F. Stone has been a guiding light in my life since I was 17, and I stumbled on an I.F. Stone's Weekly when I was going to an anti-war protest in Washington, D.C. in 1969. And then, when I was about 23, I saw this amazing black and white documentary called I.F. Stone's Weekly, a 60-minute documentary. So he's been my guiding light. I didn't grow up in a left-wing home. So it wasn't until I stumbled on that 4-page newsletter at the age of 17. I'm not like Carl Bernstein of Watergate fame. He actually grew up in a left-wing home, and I.F. Stone's Weekly was coming into his home every week. When Naomi Klein was here to accept the Izzy Award, she pointed out that her dad, as a young man, in the early years of the Vietnam War, was reading I.F. Stone's Weekly, and it explains why she grew up in Canada and not the United States. Gwen told me that a lot of her older relatives, when they heard she had been given the Izzy Award, talked about how the newsletter was in their homes. That wasn't the case for me. In my family's lore, what is always talked about is how I was fired from the family, from my dad's business, for union activity. There would be no Izzy Award if not for Adelaide Park Gomer of the Park Foundation. And the first, and the dean of the Park School when I got here was so helpful, Diane Lynch. And there'd be no Izzy Award if it wasn't for the late, great Bob McChesney, the media scholar. And he's the one, he was the matchmaker that brought me together with Adelaide and Diane. And then we started this center and started the Izzy Award. Why did we launch the Izzy Award? Because of the total failure of the corporate mainstream media. Their failure to expose all of the lies that led to the Iraq War and all of the greed that led to the economic meltdown of 2007, 8, 9. Max has talked about it. That meltdown is still affecting people to this day. So we needed something to celebrate the people that were breaking through the propaganda of corporate media. Many of you know I founded FAIR in 1986. And what we looked at was corporate media concentration, corporate media censorship, bias, exclusion. And, you know, doing that day after day can be a little depressing. So in 2008, when I came to Ithaca for the Park Center for Independent Media, it was as if I walked into the light, because instead of just talking about how awful corporate media were, we could talk about the real stars of independent media that were covering racism, covering worker exploitation, covering war in ways that was not allowed in mainstream media, as I learned when I used to work in the mainstream media. So these journalists that we're honoring today, they don't have bosses like Barry Weiss telling them what to do. They don't have bosses like Larry Ellison or his son David Ellison, who have taken over the media step by step by step with Trump's help. First taking over Paramount. We know that Stephen Colbert will only do 18 more shows before he's censored. People have fled in droves from CBS News because of Barry Weiss, Larry Ellison, and David Ellison. Larry Ellison made his fortune at Oracle. If you go online, you'll see his nickname, O-R-A-C-L-E, one rich asshole called Larry Ellison. They then took over the US operation of TikTok so they could cleanse it of criticism about Israel. They're in the process, unless we stop them. RootsAction.org has been fighting this fight to try to stop them from going forward and taking over Warner Brothers Discovery. And if they take that over, that will mean that they have CNN. And Larry Ellison, according to the Wall Street Journal, has already spoken with a high-level White House aide about which CNN anchors will lose their jobs after they take over Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns CNN, and they will probably put an end to the greatest investigative journalist on TV today, the comedian John Oliver on HBO, which they will own. So it's a great honor. I've got that Hugh Hefner plaque sort of in a dark part of my basement. I think it's now time for me to take it down completely and in a prominent place in my home, put this plaque. It's a real honor. Thank you, Mickey.
Thanks so much. So we are at near the end of the program, and I have a short closing remarks, and then we're going to probably start cleaning up. If you want to still go back there in the tables and grab any of the books or anything, please feel free to do that. I definitely wanted to thank all of our co-sponsors, Project Look Sharp, Project Censored, the Ithaca College Roy Park School of Communications, Department of Journalism, and of course, SPJ Region 1 Movement Media Alliance for the Izzy Freedom Forum, Press Freedom Forum. So thanks to all of our sponsors. As 20th century media critic George Seldes once noted, the job of journalism is not impartial, balanced reporting, it's to tell the public what's really going on. What we need today is nothing short of an all-hands-on-deck moment in the Fourth Estate. We not only need to support and spread the word about the best investigative journalism from the independent press, but we need to encourage, indeed demand, that the establishment media, with their massive resources, return to a focus on what the public needs to know, what's really going on, as Seldes said, not what elite billionaire owners or an increasingly bewildered populace might like. As Movement Media Alliance journalists Maya Chenwar and Lara Witt put in Project Censored's 50th anniversary yearbook, quote, "There's no power for the people without journalism by and for the people." Let us bring back the golden age of muckrakers in the present. Our future and the future of the planet depend upon it. Let's hear it for all of our winners and honorable mentions this evening, and thanks to all of you for your support for independent journalism and the Park Center for Independent Media, and special thanks to Marcy Sutherland. Thanks, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we will see you here again. Please check out ifstone.org and parkindymedia.org and keep up on our events and what we're doing. We're doing a lot of things on campus every semester, at least 1 or 2 things a month. And of course, if you want to learn more about the project at its 50th, go to projectcensored.org. Thanks, everybody.